on the softs is back. Monaco Grand Prix. Pretty decent race, if we're going to be honest. Not as boring as some of the other ones. I know during the race I was really pissed that they weren't running in the wet, but we found out post-race is that they lost power on the grid, so they couldn't even do the lights, and that's why I don't think we got any standing starts, which I'm wondering if that was just made up after the fact to cover some bases. I want the conspiracy theorist to be.
Monaco, Monte Carlo, whatever you want to call it, is one of the richest square feet in the entire planet. Only billionaires live there, and you're telling me they couldn't afford the light bill? Like, what happened?
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah.
By the way, do you know how you buy a house in Monaco? You don't. You have to inherit, and if you go to actually buy it, the next inheritor of the property has to sign off on you buying it. So, yeah, I think that.
So then, how did all the drivers win there? Is it just because they rent apartments? Is that how that works?
You're on mute, AJ.
You're gone.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, my roommates are blasting music at the moment. Anyway, there we go. Yeah, sorry. What was the question?
So again, because like we said, only billionaires live there. But then also every Formula One driver now has a residency there in some capacity. So do they get it from someone who already has it?
Yes.
Or do they,
So the only reason I know is because I knew somebody in college that had a house there. Yeah. So basically you could buy a house there, but the next inheritor would have to sign off on the property. So if my dad had a house there and he wanted to sell it, I would have to sign off on him selling it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Which I would not do.
No, never. Absolutely never. I think there's also a way to get around it with apartments or whatever. I don't think anybody really lives in a house, but yeah. I mean, we were blessed. Monaco, again, it's just a legendary circuit, but I think the weather made things very interesting as well.
Again, obviously the big thing to get into, Charles Leclerc finally finished the race at Monaco, except not in the place he expected it to be. Again, we're newer fans to Formula One. I know we've all went back and watched as many races as possible, followed as many of the different stories of F1. Yeah. That's got to be one of the all-time strategy blunders, back to back. It wasn't just one; they did it twice in a row. Yeah. Unbelievable, Jake. What did you think?
I'm not even kidding. I would have rathered it be like last year when Leclerc's driving to the grid and his car just shits the bed and doesn't even race. Then have him run the whole race 3 seconds ahead. Oh, I'm just having a great day. I'm finally going to do this, yada, yada. And then just to have Ferrari pull an all-time Ferrari and just blow it. There's no reason. It's so frustrating that we threw away so many good points 2 weeks in a row. Spain was mechanical, sure. But there's no reason that Ferrari shouldn't win this race and come away with a max haul of points. Leclerc drove lights out all weekend. He trusted in Ferrari to not screw up pitting. And they couldn't even do that. They couldn't even look over their shoulders and see Carlos Sainz coming down the pit lane.
Well, the thing is, not only did they mess that up earlier, they messed up the first stop with putting him on the inters, because they should have just left them both on the wets, because once they did that, the Red Bulls were just flying. Yeah. And then they made up on the overcut. But then, so at that point, they gave up the race win. But he was still in the podium positions. And then they pin him behind his teammate, basically just sealing the deal, which was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And then they're telling him to stay out when he's halfway down the pit. It was, I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that's interesting, though, is when Sainz asked for dry tires, and they ran him for another 5 or 6 laps on the wets. I wonder what would have happened there, because he would have been realistic, one of the first people on dry tires, right? But the track, it was still kind of iffy. I'm wondering how much that would have changed in terms of strategy or gap. Also, not even from a Ferrari perspective, but just for a data perspective overall. Because after you saw 6-7 laps later, he went to dries, then Red Bull went to dries and everything else. I'm wondering how that would have impacted the race.
I think that would have put Red Bull, especially if Carlos Sainz went out there and ran some good laps. I think that would have put pressure on Red Bull to make to do it sooner. Yeah. Instead, Ferrari just handed them a winning strategy. It was just okay, thanks.
If they let Sainz pit when he wanted to for hards or whatever, if they just threw him on hards and then get out there, he would have won that race, no problem. He was running great on the hards in second, and then but like Pup said, they just gave it to Red Bull. They said, you know what? We want to make this really frustrating, so just go ahead and win this, Christian. This is all you. Let Checo get a win. Go ahead.
Again, I actually think Carlos Sainz still could have won that race. But so I started to think with Albon, when they told him who was behind, dude, he slowed down. Albon slowed down. He played that right for Red Bull, dude. He played Red Bull driver number 3. And who could blame him? He's got it on his helmet. It's Monaco. That you can't really say anything otherwise, but he played right into that and helped his team get a win. Again, some people were pissed about that. That's who cashes the checks, my friend.
Yeah.
That's who writes the checks.
I think the other thing that was like kind of crazy was like the challenge of Red Bull leaving the pits. Like that was not even close. If you look at like the car view kind of showed it, sure, but I found this other one on Twitter where it's like somebody's apartment like filmed it or something.
Yeah, they weren't even close.
And also, if you look at the cockpit, you like he's catching the car, like the car is sliding.
Yeah, it's a wet track.
But again, at that point,
at
that point, if you're Ferrari, though, you have to do anything.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah. I mean,
to just hope
it's
to just make it seem like up. See.
Yeah. Like, if you don't do anything, I think it's also a thing for Leclerc to save face, right? So it's like a thing for Ferrari if they're like, all right, we screwed up, like we're gonna try to do everything else, you know. I don't know. I mean, like whatever. Like every team does it anymore, but it was just like one of those things where it's like I don't know.
Petty. It was a petty protest for sure. Checo.
Yeah.
Great race. He deserved this. Not only did he deserve this one, I think he deserved the last one. And I saw someone said the standings, I think, would be Max, him, and Charles in third, and him and Max would be separated by 1 point. I said earlier that, you know, again, I still think this. I think Max and Charles, this is who's fighting for the world championship. But Checo showed that he belongs in that car.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm happy to have him.
I think he's going to get a couple other wins. I mean, it's
yeah.
Right now, you're in a 3-way race.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I think the main thing though is, and like we really talked about this before, like you know, Max is 1, Checo's 2, right? And I think that worked extremely, extremely well. And when we need Checo there, he's there. He's been there always. But I think we don't want to start with like the animosity from the team where we have like Max and Checo getting into it, and then it's like, well, like you're the old head, like you're out. This is my team. You have Yells for Verstappen making comments. Like we really don't want to get into that conflict there. Like, you know, I know he's totally off base. He's totally wrong.
There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than like the LeVar ball. Yeah. He's the LeVar ball in everyone. Because it's like his kid. It's not like his kid isn't making those comments. Again, Max did make a comment like the steering in the front of the car isn't the way he normally likes it, but again, that's still, they're getting used to the car. It wasn't like, oh, I have a shitty car, and they're not making the car for me. There was no, oh, I'm mad they didn't hand me this win. First off, he was never in line for this win. So I don't want to know where Jos Verstappen thinks like they would have like somehow got him out in front without completely sacrificing everybody else's race within the team. It made no sense. His comments made absolutely no sense. He usually makes no sense. And just like, again, like, I guess when, like, Max was, like, 17, 18, it was like, I'm his dad. Like, but, like, your son's a world champion now. He's a better driver than you ever were.
Max is his own man.
Shut up.
Let him talk for himself.
Shut up. Like, shut
Checo,
up.
that was one of the better weekends of his whole career. Almost every practice session and qualifying, he was just putting
Checo was better than Max.
Yeah, he was better than Max this weekend.
Checo was better than Max all weekend.
No, yeah, without a question.
Checo
and I think also with the track like Monaco, like we were going back and forth in our group text, like it's points on Saturday. I mean, although it didn't necessarily pan out like that, like it's that important. And when Checo goes fast overall on FP2 and FP3, like, I mean, quali, yeah, like he had that massive mess up, which huge credit to like Red Bull's, like their engineers for fixing that. I think that's unreal that they were able to put that car back together and still make it a winning race car. But yeah, I mean, Max just wasn't in the conversation all weekend. Like he was there. I mean, was he necessarily a threat? Probably not. Other than, hey, it's the wet and it's Max and it's Monaco, so you know nobody knows what's going to happen. But I think that was the best car that he had all weekend, to be honest.
Oh, for sure. And I also think, too, with what you saying points on Saturday, I still think, like, again, you got to get into that top 4 if you want to be top 4, top 5, if you want to be in question for that podium. Because like, if you're back in 8th, if something happens up front, you're still not going to get there. So it really is points on Saturday. Now, things will happen in the race Sunday that could change how many points you get. Mm-hmm. But that, again, to that, though, I think we need to change the qualifying format at that track as well because it's awful. It's just awful. If we're going to keep Monaco on the calendar, which we all hope they do,
maybe.
I feel like they should do like 2-lap qualifying where like each car goes out there. You do a random draw.
Yeah, go 1-shot qualifying.
So everybody gets a random draw. Like even if they do 2-shot and it's your best time out of those 2, that's what they take and that's where you qualify. To just mix it up because we saw it at the end where a couple guys laps got screwed because Checo fumbled it a little bit. I don't think it was intentional. I know some people were like, "Oh, he did that on purpose." It wasn't.
He's not Schumacher.
He's not Nico Rosberg purposely driving it off in the first turn. Like, oh, I didn't see that coming. He just got it up on the curb a little bit, but I think it was a good weekend. I think Red Bull, they got it all together right now. All of the momentum is in their favor. One, I think their car is slightly a little better, but not only that, it's just they're as a team, they don't make mistakes.
Yeah.
They're not making those crucial mistakes that Ferrari is making. It's just, I know, again, last week it wasn't really their fault. It was, mechanical, but to throw the race away like that, that's going to take a couple weeks, I think, for Charles to get over. One, because it is his home race. And two, to get that trust back in the team, he's going to be questioning, are you guys sure? Are we sure we want to pit now?
Yeah.
And I just hope that doesn't come back to bite him in the ass.
That's 2 weeks in a row. That's not killed his championship, but the difference of he could have had 50 points over the last 2 weekends, and now he only came away with nothing from Spain, and then what? Was it 15 for fourth? I think it is. I'm not sure what how far it goes on the scale.
And now he's down.
Yeah.
I think it's 12.
Oh, yeah, is it right?
12.
So from 50 to 12, in 2 weekends, the whole championship's been just flipped upside down. A couple of weeks ago, Leclerc has a good shot after Australia. Leclerc's looking really good. Can't stop him, blah, blah, blah. A couple weeks, a month later, 2 months later, it's Leclerc's throwing, or not Leclerc, but Ferrari's throwing these crucial points away, and it's really going to hurt Leclerc a couple months from now. It's not looking good for him.
2 months ago, Max thought he was out of the championship after 3 races.
Yeah.
He was like, I just don't know. They're too tough. And
yeah, he literally said that. He's like,
gone.
we're not focused on the championship at all. We're focused on finishing races. That was literally our attitude. And I think that just speaks to again, we burned a lot of the the upgrade budget, but I think that just speaks to how quickly we can develop and stay on our feet, as a team. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up, Checo's contract through 2024, I think that's going to be huge because before the regulation change last year, right? Checo was just getting comfy in that car. He did awesome towards the end of the year, but he was still just getting comfy in that. This year, same thing. New regulations, everybody as a whole is still getting comfortable in that car. And for him to be as lights out as he is, that just speaks to how far he can actually go. So we're going to have him over 2 years. I think, we're going to be on the radar for the foreseeable future.
It's great for the structure of the team. You don't have to worry about getting a new guy in there who's maybe a little more hungry and trying to compete with Max. You got a guy in there who wants to get some wins, he wants to win a world championship, and who knows, maybe he can, but he knows his place within the team for the most part.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like that aspect of that he's hungry because that's going to make Max better when Max is a young driver, right? Max is always historically, right? So he's been with Danny Rick, for example. When Danny Rick was pretty damn good, you know what I mean? I feel like he needs that, and we almost fell off as a team when we were going with the whole Albon Pierre Gasly thing, where it was always just he has no support. He needs somebody.
Well, that was also that the engine and the car just wasn't.
Yeah,
as good
but also those drivers
Mercedes
just weren't good as well. So he needs somebody that has that older mentality of experience of let's not jump at things and be super apprehensive. Let's just wait. Let's see the flow of the race goes. That's really how Monaco went this year. And I think that's really good for Max. I think having, seeing that his team can support somebody of that caliber and then also allow him to kind of grow with the team as well. I think that's really good for him. There's a lot more that goes into this decision than just the fact that, okay, Checo can win races and whatever. There's a lot of other stuff for Max's development that goes into this decision, I think. And it's kind of what Aston Martin's doing with Stroll and Vettel. Granted, Stroll should not even be near an Uber, meanwhile an F1 car, but that's kind of their mentality, right? It's we're going to have this experienced guy that's good, we're going to let him kind of foster and take Stroll under his wing. I feel Red Bull's kind of doing the same thing with a much more talented driver.
That's not what's going on there. What's going on there is a rich dad bought a team for his son.
But who would you want your son to drive with? Sebastian Vettel or not Sebastian Vettel?
Well, also, again, I don't think Sebastian Vettel went there I'm going to mentor Lance Stroll. I think he was going there thinking he was going to be driving a Racing Point car, competing in the top 4 of the midfield at least. In the top 4, in the top of the midfield at least, and he's driving a shit box. And he's going to be gone after this year. I think he's going to retire. Yeah. I seriously think he's gone. I just how is this fun? Again, I think you can see it in him. He loves getting top 10s and shit. But he can go race somewhere else and too good, and it's just like it's probably be more fun.
So
than this.
who takes Seb's seat? Let's speculate way too early before anything even happens.
Well, before we get into that, what the Checo contract says more than anything is Pierre Gasly is never going to be the second driver at Red Bull.
No, I don't want him any.
He's gone.
Him or Albon.
Again, you don't want him, and I get why, because like you saw it wasn't great. I think he's 10 times the driver he was at that point. You saw some of the passes he was making early in the race. Those were some fire passes. He's been doing. He puts that car up in the midfield, and they're good. They have a decent structure. That team. It's not like they're scrubs, but they don't have the machinery that some of those other guys he competes with. I'd like to see him again. I know that Fernando wants to hog a F1 seat for the next 6 years till he's about 52, but I'd like to see him there. I think Aston Martin's another good spot for him because I think Aston Martin's eventually going to become Audi, and I think that would be great for Pierre to be there because I think eventually Audi's not just going to be some middle-of-the-pack team. They're going to try to compete to be an elite team. Again, if Lewis says goodbye, if I was Mercedes, I'd want Pierre in my the second driver in my team. I think he's that good.
But he couldn't keep a car on track.
But that's
but
a
the
hard
thing
car
was
to
that
drive.
was like
compared to the W11 that was that year, or the W10. Like those cars are much easier to drive for a second driver than that iteration of the Red Bull made for Max Verstappen to just rip around the track
first
for
off
70 laps.
That Red Bull, he may have been too young. He may not have been ready, but it wasn't like Daniel Kvyat where when he left the team, he went back to AlphaTauri, what they are now, and he was just average. Like Pierre won a race. Pierre's won a race since then, and yes, it kind of fell into his lap, but he still won it, and he kept a McLaren behind him. So I think he is a good. I think again, we're not talking like he's a number one driver. I think he's going to take it by storm. I don't think he's on that level. I still think he's a guy who can win races. Again, I get why Red Bull are probably hesitant because the first time they had him in. But Red Bull's keeping what's his name around with the intention. I think Albon's going to get back into that team eventually before anybody else. I think that's why they kept him around. Again, he was instrumental. He was a great guy to have around the team. Even Max said so for when they won the championship. He's the first one yelling on the radio when Max is crossing the finish line. So I think Red Bull likes to have those guys because they are a family. But again, they do want to win. And I just think they've reached that point where they have Tsunoda, they have Pierre, they have Albon. Albon's going to be in the AlphaTauri next year.
Yeah, it'll be him and Tsunoda.
For sure, I think so. Him and Tsunoda. And maybe not Tsunoda because that Honda connection is kind of disappearing. And that's really what Tsunoda was.
I don't think any of their F2 drivers...
Like Red Bull's got like 4 drivers in F2. So it's like Pierre, he's just not what they need right now. And they know Pierre. And I also think it's like a gesture like, listen, we know you want to go race with the bigger team. This is the sign that they're letting him go. That, maybe again, if he was there in 2 years, they probably would take him because I do think he's better than Albon and Tsunoda. But I have a feeling that he's going to be with a different team next year.
Speaking of different teams next year, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jake.
There's just rumors, real quick, of there's talks. It's like a 2-team thing now, but it's rumors that if McLaren were to drop Danny Rick,
that's what I was about to say.
Perfect. If McLaren were to drop Danny Rick, people were talking that they should. I think they should also go after Pierre Gasly. Him and Lando, just like 2 young, fantastic, fast drivers. I think that would be a great move for the team going forward. Because I don't know who else McLaren could put in there besides Colton Herter or Pato O'Ward. But
Pato O'Ward is pretty much out on. Pato O'Ward's out on that discussion. He just signed like a long-term deal with Aero SP that gives him F1 opportunities, like to test cars and stuff. But Zach Brown's made it very clear with Pato that Pato would have to win the IndyCar championship to what she is in contention.
It could very well happen.
And to be honest, he almost won the Indy 500 on Sunday as well. So again, if he wins that would be really cool because then that could speed it on his way. I really think Zach Brown is more inclined to give it to Pato O'Ward because he's an American.
Or Colton, you mean?
They're trying to grow. McLaren is trying to become the most popular team and the fastest growing market for everyone.
Yeah, there was a snippet during the Indy that I forget who Zach Brown was talking to, but somebody made like a joke or something about Danny Rick's seat and whatever, and they're like, "Oh, are you scouting talent or whatever?" And Zach Brown said, "Oh, somehow the conversation evolved into who do you like, right?" and whoever Zach Brown was talking to, the guy's like, oh, like calling her to, and Zach Brown just went like, he just like smirked and smiled. Everybody was like, is that like who you're going to go with or whatever? And just like, he left it open.
I think he's going to be.
But like, he very much hinted at it there.
He's going to be a McLaren driver. Everyone thought that he was going to be the guy that Andretti brought over, and initially he was. And if he doesn't get a McLaren seat, that's, again, we're still not sure if the Andretti thing is going to happen. I think it's going to. That's who they want to take. But Andretti's also not going to hold Colton Herta back from going and driving with McLaren. And that could also then give Andretti an opportunity to maybe get an Pato Award or a couple other Americans into their seats.
How about Mick Schumacher? Is he going to be operating a Formula One vehicle?
I think he gets one more year with Haas, and then after that, I think even though his Ferrari connections are strong, if he doesn't
that's what's going to save him this year.
If he doesn't improve,
that's what's going to save him this year.
If he wasn't connected with Ferrari and Ferrari didn't give Haas their engines, he'd be gone after this season. But I think because of that, he gets one more year. And obviously, we've only had, 7 races now? 6 races? So he still has a whole bunch of races to, finally score points. But if not, there's going to be real questions after this season, then definitely after next season if nothing improves. He's not looked the way that I thought he was going to. Like, he was a good driver in F2, but he was never I would say the fastest maybe. He won on consistency in F2.
He was never the fastest. It was all consistency in F2. He was always where he needed to be to score the maximum points that he could that weekend.
So hot take, right? And this is gonna piss off many people, but
you think he's done?
Dude, what if he's just not a race car driver? What if he just has a name? What if he's just not a race car driver? Like,
I don't want to say again. That's a little harsh. Not a race car driver. Maybe not an F1 driver.
Product. Like, let's at least say that. Like,
okay.
Like, he's just. I mean, I don't know. Like, when he was with Mazepin, like, it was easy, right? It was like, oh, like, Mazepin, like, he sucks. They're getting money from Putin even. Like, who cares? Like, screw him, right? But, like, now it's like the excuses are, like, just dwindling down more and more. And it was like, oh, like, the white Ferrari, like, it's quick. That's how it started the year. And then now it's just like, you have even, like, Gunther coming out and saying, like, he hasn't lived up to our expectations. It's just, like, at some point, like, how far does the Schumacher name, the Ferrari connection get you? Before there's legitimate questions of, like... Again,
I think questions should be brought up. I do think it's a little... Last year, when he first came in F1, his teammate was the worst driver on the grid.
Yes.
By far.
Yes.
Okay, and Nicholas Latifi was on the same grid as him. So, and I'm saying by far,
dude, he's the man.
But I'm just saying, like, Nicholas Latifi's bad. Mazepin was that much worse.
Yeah.
So, of course, everyone was like, "Oh, Mick Schumacher's beating him every weekend. They're in the worst car on the grid. They weren't racing against anybody because they weren't near any other cars." So, again, he looked good. He beat Mazepin all the time because that's who he was going up against. Then the next year, they bring in a guy with the team who. Let's get something straight. Before, he was with Haas, he was a good driver. The first thing he did when he came into F1, Magnussen, was put a McLaren that shouldn't have been on a podium. So we got to stop. I just pump the brakes a little bit because he can't compare him to Magnussen because Magnussen is an elite driver who has been in F1 for many years, has done other motorsports and been successful. So. Again, the question should be brought up, like, how far does it take you? I think it would be so premature if they were to just choose someone after this year. Again, now, if he's abysmal for the rest of the season, then okay, but I think we got a lot of time left.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the really long.
Again, I don't know if Mick's ever going to be as good as... He's not going to be as good as his dad was. Let's just get that out of the way. I have serious doubts that he's ever going to make it to Ferrari, but I would pump... Just that... I'd pump the brakes on he's not cut out for this yet. I think I need a little more time.
Okay. He'll be more like a Ralph Schumacher than a Michael Schumacher, which is still a good career.
Ralph was a good driver. I think he won. I think he ended up winning 7.
He had a couple, but he was on a good Williams team, and he competed against Michael. Like, they had a good little clash for a couple of years.
I think there's two things with if Mick Schumacher, if his name was Mick Robinson, I think people would be like, Mick Robinson's a decent driver. He hasn't really lived up to expectations, but he's okay. I think the Schumacher name is a blessing and a curse. I think it's a blessing in the sense that, it's got him a lot of places that maybe his driving shouldn't have gotten him, but then it's like people think you should be, like your dad was 2 years into the Formula division, and you're freaking winning races, and then next year competing for a championship with a T-shirt manufacturing company. Like, I think it's just he's young too. It's like, what is he, like 22?
Yeah.
So pump the brakes. Yeah, let's give him a chance here.
All right, let's look ahead a little bit to Azerbaijan.
Wait, hold on. We got to talk about our friends Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, that's right. I forgot they're still racing.
Also ran.
George Russell does it again.
Yeah. I have that actually on my notes here. Yeah, extends the streak. I mean, so here's a little throwing a wrench in the plans here. Lewis still continues to not do well. Next year, say it's more of the same story. Say Red Bull just dominates next year again. What about Russell taking Checo's seat?
George Russell's not going to leave Mercedes. I think he's in his deal with Mercedes 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Let's get something clear here. Mercedes is going to have a car next year that's winning races. I'm sure I still don't cut out that they win at least one. That team every year of its existence, except the first 3, where their car was
brand new.
mid-pack.
Yeah, it was a brand new car.
It was brand new car. Yeah, like that.
They had an old Michael Schumacher as their second driver because he was just bored and wanted money. Like, they weren't a serious team.
Just wanted money and wanted to race again. So let's pump the brakes there. Again, maybe in a couple of years he would do that. Lewis, he's got his lap. I think, like you always say, Max is on the best lap ever. Every time it doesn't happen. I think Lewis was on the greatest lap of Monaco history, but then Checo did that thing with Carlos Sainz, and he missed it. But again, he got stuck behind friggin'
that was
Alonso, who had them backed up
40
50 seconds behind the leader. Hey, how about the radio calls were fantastic for that? How far are they ahead of me? Lewis, I think the more important statement would be that how far are they behind you? They're behind me. That was comical.
I've never seen another driver hate another one the way Fernando hates Lewis. Like in any other racing series, like even in NASCAR, guys will have beef, and they'll punch it out in the pits or whatever. Or they'll bump each other off track, and they'll get it over with after a race or two. Fernando Alonso's hated Lewis Hamilton since 2007. Dude, this is 15 years now. He hates Lewis Hamilton. He's like, oh, Hamilton's behind me. Watch this. Drives 30 miles under the limit.
How would you feel, though, if a kid that, when they brought him up, you looked at Ron Dennis and said, I thought you wanted to win the Constructors' Championship, and then, he kind of takes your career.
Oh, Lewis punked him. Lewis punked Alonso that year.
He kind of took his career.
Fernando won the last 2 championships, went to McLaren. Oh, guys, I'm going to be so fast here. And Lewis comes in hey, what's up, man?
I'm going to be so fast here. They tied the first year only because the last couple races, Lewis had a couple blunders because he could have won the championship that year. Then the next year he won it. Then Alonso was like, I'm going to go to Ferrari. Red Bull put a wrench into those plans. And then he was like, I'm going to go back to McLaren.
GP2 engine.
The GP2 Honda engine. And you think about that. People always give, who are we always making fun of? Danny Rick for making bad career decisions. I don't know if he's made as bad or unfortunate ones as Fernando Alonso has. I mean, whew.
I just think Fernando Alonso is always going to be more notable than Danny Rick, so it's just going to be more of
because
Danny Rick's career is going to be nowhere near as Alonso. He's like a flash in the pan, you know. Anyway, Azerbaijan. So 2 DRS zones. We have Ferrari that's going to absolutely dismantle and dominate Sector 2. But Red Bull is going to fly with Sector 1 and 3.
This is the best street course on the grid.
Yeah.
The best street course on the grid. This is one of my favorite tracks.
With the castle turn and stuff, it's so tight. It's so fast. You're driving by a freaking castle. It's so cool.
It's so cool.
The front straight is just the speeds they reach on that when they have somebody getting towed in qualifying is just it's just so much fun to watch. These cars going full speed, crank the engine up, rip down that straightaway to get the best lap in. It's so much fun to watch. It's fun in the video game. It's a great race all around.
The video game, it's the best track in the game. I do have a question for both of you, being the Red Bull and Ferrari guys of the podcast. Now, we've seen lately that the Ferrari seems to be more set up for qualifying, and then the Red Bull does way better in the race. But with, like AJ said, the 2 DRS straights, and how fast the Red Bull is in the straight line, does Red Bull take a front row lockout this weekend? Because I'm thinking they do.
Yeah,
I know that I know you said the Ferrari's going to be really fast in the turns in Sector 2, but those straights make up the big part of this track.
Yeah, I agree with that take. I think the only thing that really troubles me, though, is that the straights lead into, like, straight 90-degree turns, right? So, like, you're full on and then you're full off. And I think that's the only thing that worries me, is that it's not like a true straight that, like, would lead into, like, a softer chicane or anything. Like, even though that they're going to dominate that Sector 2 because it's all, like, those, like, short, like, little, like, short, like, slow turns, the only thing that worries me is that under braking, those quick turns, that still favors Ferrari even though it's in those sectors. I mean, it's just going to depend, honestly, it's going to depend on what engine position that we come in with. Like, what kind of party mode are we going to throw on to quali well? Jake, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I didn't think about it, but yeah, a Red Bull lockout wouldn't surprise me at all. Checo finally has, I don't know what this car is so much different than last year's, but Checo really has this car, like, underneath him. When he's in that car, he is, at worst, the 4th fastest driver or the 3rd fastest driver if he's better than Sainz.
He's great the last 2 weeks.
So I think a Red Bull lockout wouldn't surprise me at all, especially like you said. Ferrari, they'll be really fast by the castle, but Leclerc's been it there before in races and qualifying with a really good Ferrari, and just like you said, the front straight is going to be so fast. I think if you just get a decent Sector 3 coming out of those last couple of turns, I mean, Checo and Max could easily run away with this one. If they get a clean start and they go clean into turn 1 and get like a second or 2 gap, they could just pull away with DRS, and they could really have a dominant win if they like really get it together this weekend or next weekend.
I will say, too, I'm really interested to see what compound Pirelli brings this year, because last year was an issue. And the man who would have won the race didn't win the race. And almost, I mean, if Lewis doesn't,
Punterino.
Punterino. That was almost like a ball don't lie situation, like in basketball, where, like, listen, this was Max, it wasn't Max's fault, so the universe had to correct itself there. But Max would have won that race had that tire just completely, and there was nothing on the sensor or anything, it just completely blew. So it'll be really interesting to see what Pirelli brings. I will also say, I want to know how my team's going to do, because the week before they were like really fast in straights, and then they came to Monaco and they looked like they were driving the shitbox car again. And then now we're back to a regular track. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
it's really another.
I think the big question mark for Mercedes is, have they finally solved the porpoising, right? Because we saw them in the previous race before Monaco. Like, they were kind of like turning it off, turning it back on. Like, Russell didn't have it, Lewis did. They changed the setup a little bit. Like, they really started to figure it out, I think. But also in Monaco, like, I don't think you're really hitting those speeds fast enough where that would be a factor. You know what I mean? I think this is going to be the first true test of, like, this kind of does play into Mercedes' hands, because, like, the car is not there in a straight line. If you're going to win the race, it's going to be in those slower speed turns, like, closer to Ferrari's strategy. I think the main thing is, the porpoising, like, is that actually figured out? Because now is where it was going to, like, rear its head, right? We weren't going to see it last week. It would be here.
Again, when they were on the straights in a couple of the practice sessions, and I think during the race too, in Spain, down the straight, they were like pretty fast without the porpoising. Now, if that's a problem, then they're not going to be fast. So that's really interesting for them. Another thing that's going to be really interesting is, because I still don't know what the McLaren car is, because Lando Norris drives it so well, and then Danny Rick puts it in like P15. So I can't tell if he's just really not it anymore, or if Lando Norris is just it. It's, like, so confusing to me, because I think Jake, you tweeted it to us, like, their difference is worse than Mazepin and Schumacher's difference was last year.
And I saw a thing, apparently, like, last year the McLaren was obviously built for Lando's style, because it was the last year of that car reg, so they said, screw it, let's have Lando get the best car, yada yada. And apparently over the winter, when they were designing this car, the things that hurt Danny Rick, they thought, okay, let's put those in a way for Danny Rick to be better with the car. So they made it not fully towards Lando, but more like, say, 60-40 this time instead of 80-20. Mm-hmm. And Danny Rick still can't drive the car. It's just not... I don't know if he's losing it. I don't know if he just... I don't know, but it's not looking good for Danny Rick anymore.
Yeah. Well, we will wait
No,
and
it is
see here,
not.
boys. A couple short days.
Couple short days. Now, your picks, before we tail off here, there's still one more race I want to talk about. Your picks going into the weekend.
I'm gonna keep on my thing. I think it's Leclerc, Verstappen, Checo. It's not failed me yet. I'm staying with it. I know it makes no sense at all, but just not. I'm not in the racing suit today. I thought that might screw things up. So I have to do at least one thing the same, and that's Leclerc, Verstappen, Checo. That's what we're gonna see.
I'm saying Max, Charles, and then Perez for 1, 2, 3 in Azerbaijan.
I'm actually gonna throw something out here that may shock a couple people, and it's not a Mercedes thing. I think Checo Perez is on a tear right now. I think something has clicked in this man's brain. I'm gonna go with Checo, Verstappen, Sainz. I think Leclerc is still not fully over what happened last weekend, and I honestly think he might make a mistake in this race.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, talk about 3 shitty weeks for Leclerc. Lose the car in Spain, crash Niki Lauda's car, then Ferrari throws away a win in your hometown. There's no way he's in a good spot mentally.
That was so sad.
Like, even though he's a millionaire and flies around the world in private jets, like, he has to be getting up every day like,
him on the radio.
Man, what's going to happen next?
His uncensored radio was like, "What the hell are we doing? What the fuck are we doing?" There wasn't 2 other races on Sunday. One was like 12 hours long. The Indy 500 was such a good race. It never fails. What did you guys think?
So I thought it was a great race. I thought it was very, very good. The only thing, like, the coverage, the coverage is just nowhere near F1 quality, in my opinion. Like,
No, it's not.
I was like stupid things like commercials, or like we're watching like Rutledge Wood in like a swan in a pool. Like, just show the goddamn race. Like.
Listen, AJ, at least you saw all the laps. Because most of the time, Indy takes a commercial break like NASCAR does, and you miss about 4 or 5 laps. At least with Indy, the way the contract works is that they have to do side boxes. Which, if you're going to show commercials, it's the only way it should be done. I think it's a crime if you do it the other way, which, whatever. Especially during non-cautions. It was a great race. Couple hard hits for some of the favorite of some of my favorites. Jimmy Johnson put it into the wall. Roman Grosjean put it into the wall. Dude, those are all hard hits.
Yeah, oh my god. And
like they're brutal.
I mean, I'm not a huge Indy guy, but I think the thing for me that's so shocking, right? It's like they hit the wall and it's like, oh, like that was really hard impact. And then they go another 400 yards and they hit the wall again and you're like, oh my god, like that was another, like, there's just like you don't really get like, I don't know. You don't really. Maybe it's like just like depth perception, like whatever it is. But like when you like Grosjean, like he smacked that top wall and went like high side, and then went all the way back down to the infield, and then hit that again.
And
like,
hit it again,
really freaking hard. And I was like,
hit the first wall going like 220, and then hit the next wall probably going about 140.
Yeah,
and then just gets out of the car.
But like you don't really get like a perspective of how much faster that is in F1 until like you see that. Like it's just. Like the car's like never settles. Like he goes like down the infield, like across the grass, and you're like, okay, it's slowing down, and then the whole ass end of the car flies up when he hits the wall again, and you're like, oh my god, wait, he's still doing like $1.25 or something. That for me was kind of crazy. Like that was pretty eye opening. But all in all, I thought it was a great race.
I think another thing that's so eye opening too is when you see some of the elite of Formula One. Like Max is like, I like watching Indy. I have a lot of respect for what those guys do over there. I will never do it. He's like, nope, I'm not risking my life. I don't need to. Checo was like, same thing. He's like, I don't care. Like, it takes either some sort of desperation, like guys like Marcus Ericsson, Roman Grosjean, where Formula One was they're like, that's where they wanted to be, and then someone tells them that dream's over, and it's like, it's either you go race touring cars, you go race endurance, or the next option is you go race Indy, but you take on that beast.
Yeah.
And Marcus Ericsson. So there were a lot of funny tweets where it was like,
the 2018 Sauber drivers.
Sauber drivers. It was like, imagine telling someone that one of these guys won a Triple Crown race and it's not Charles Leclerc. And then another thing too, at one point Checo, that first season of Drive to Survive, Marcus Ericsson and Checo in both of their episodes were like 2 of the guys whose seats were at risk in the show, like when Marcus Ericsson's obviously for one reason, Checo's for another. And now both these guys winning crown jewel races over the weekend. Marcus Ericsson, that was awesome.
Yeah, Indy was a great race. I was like gutted for Scott Dixon. His qualifying run was just amazing to watch, and then to get killed on a speeding penalty like that. And then Pato O'Ward, my God, that man is such a great IndyCar driver. Like, if he doesn't win, I think he's my pick to win the championship now, and if he doesn't win Indy next year, I'll be so surprised. He has that car he's just so in tune with IndyCar, it's amazing.
I still, again, I think you're going to see a couple. Now that we're getting more back into some of the road courses, watch out for Colton Herta. I think Colton Herta is going to make a run in these next couple races with them. The thing with Pato is I do want to see Pato get more F1 opportunities, but Pato's really good on the ovals. Mm-hmm. Texas is where he got his first win. The only reason I don't think he won here was just because the Ganassi cars were faster than everybody all weekend.
Yeah.
And McLaren is now just becoming an elite IndyCar team. Big news, they just got Alexander Rossi. So we're going to get somebody new. We're going to get somebody new over at Andretti this season and somebody new over at McLaren as well, because I think Felix Rosenqvist is gone out of that seat.
Yeah.
But
Sunday could have been the greatest day for Mexican motorsports if things went out differently. It could have been Checo winning in Monaco, Pato wins in Indy, and then Daniel Suarez was running way up top in NASCAR to like one of the 3,000 wrecks that happened in that race, and he got taken out.
How that race was so long. So long. It was like 6.5 hours.
Yeah, it went to midnight. It
miles.
went to midnight. It was insane. Started at 6 o'clock, went to midnight, East Coast.
I love it, dude. I wouldn't change it at all. I would say, though, the stages, man, they got to get rid of that.
They got to get rid of that?
Yeah, the stages suck.
But Kyle Larson is just the greatest NASCAR driver I've ever seen in my entire life. He got sent to the back, 3 different times? And within 20 laps, he's running back in the top 10.
One thing I will say is he is in the best machinery, but now you're seeing the best driver. One of the best drivers I think I've seen, too, as a Jeff Gordon fan. He's just... Kyle Larson is just on a level I've never seen, especially in this era. And he gets sent to the back all the time, and he always ends up in the front. The dude is unbelievable. Expect that man to do the double next year. That man is going to do Indy and the Charlotte 100%. I think Kurt Busch did it a couple years ago in 2014.
I think
finished
Tony
in the top 6 at Indy. No, Tony Stewart is the only guy, because remember, when Tony Stewart, before he did NASCAR, Tony Stewart did the IRL, which was the Indy Racing League. It's when CART was bigger, but Indy Racing League was
still
like,
the 500.
They're the ones that, well, they had the 500, but they only did ovals.
Yeah.
So he won the championship there. He almost won the Indy 500 until his engine blown. He's the only guy to do the double and finish in the top 10 in both.
Wow.
That's insane.
But
cool.
Thanks for joining us again on another great pod, as usual. We always have some good ones on here.
Thank you. Yeah.
What do we got coming up besides Baku? Because I think these next couple weeks are just like all races.
I don't even know.
Because they have to finish
before the World Cup.
They're finishing in November. We're doing what they did last year, 22 races, but in like a month short of the calendar. Last year went to like mid-December. This year we're going like the end of it ends the day before the World Cup starts.
So we got Azerbaijan, we got Canada, Great Britain, Austria, France. That takes
some of the best races are coming up. That stretch right there of Canada's one of my favorite tracks. Azerbaijan's my favorite street. Canada's a great road circuit, road course. Silverstone is Silverstone. Maybe we get a little more action, some 50G crashes in that again, huh?
That's so shitty.
Shooter up the inside.
All right, thank you for joining us, everybody. See you next time.
Adios.